Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, the sigh is well and truly back because that was a stinker of a performance. That was probably the worst, I think it has to be easily the worst Spurs display of the Postecoglou era. It felt like classic Tottenham Hotspur script writing, didn't it? You know, you go to Villa Park, massive game, loads of pressure, tough venue, resounding win, terrific performance, so many positives to it. Put yourself firmly in the driving seat. And what's that? Tottenham Hotspur want to change that? Oh, okay, yeah, we can mess it up 6 days later and just go the short distance across London and, you know, put in the most, like I say, disappointing performance of the season. It's like the reverse of the Al Pacino moment in Godfather Part 3. It is. You remember that moment in Godfather Part 3 when he says, you know, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in, kind of thing. I don't know who the hell that was supposed to sound like. It was allegedly Al Pacino. This was like the opposite. It was like, just when I think they've pulled me back in, they kind of chew me up, spit me out and throw me away. And that really is the way with Spurs sometimes. Yeah, it was a poor performance. I mean, very little kind of positive. Weirdly, it was still a poor performance, yet in the first half, there were about 3 decent chances Spurs could have taken to completely change the course of the game, probably. It was disappointing. That's the first time I've seen Postecoglou really disappointed with his team, and disappointed with the way they acted, reacted, everything, you know, in between as well. I should stress, look, if you're coming here for a video where expecting someone to essentially massively overreact, slate everything, call for the head of the manager, want everything chucked out the door once again, I'm sorry, this is not probably going to be the video for you. I'm definitely going to look at a lot of the negatives and things that needs to change and bits of that performance that were just absolutely shocking in some aspects. But I'm also well aware that this is a rebuild. It really is. And it's a rebuild with a young team. And with that sort of kind of setup and construction or reconstruction of a team, you're going to have days like that, as disappointing as it was and as they are when you see that. But it just is. You're going to have these really rubbish days at the office. It's going to happen. You know, we all want to rebuild, and I'm just as guilty as everyone else of wanting a rebuild, but then you kind of get the elements of what a rebuild constitutes and the bad parts of it, and you're like, oh, I didn't really want that. And that's why, yeah, you are going to get absolutely naff days like that. You know, you've got to put it into context. I mean, what is it? Spurs won, I saw the stat earlier today, saying like they've won 8 of their past 13 Premier League games. They've only lost 3 of them. I think that was only their 3rd away defeat of the season for Spurs. You know, it's not this horrendous end of the world performance that I think some people are kind of trying to make out. It was just a really poor day, and it's going to happen. And it was the first time for me where the team have really kind of strayed away from what Postecoglou wants them to do. And I think he essentially said that after the game as well. First time they really didn't show any of the required levels to make his football work. But, yeah, it isn't the end of the world. Villa's draw at West Ham today has also kind of just about kept it in Spurs' hands. You know, bearing in mind they're 3 points behind, 1 behind in the goal difference. So they would have to win the game in hand by more goals than Villa, of course. But it is kind of there. But as Postecoglou says, and we've got quotes to come, so much of the season left. You know, 10 games left is a huge amount of games in terms of the business end of a season. But yeah, this isn't going to be a video where it's all going to be woe is us, woe is Spurs, why are we always so awful, all of this sort of stuff. And the manager, I've genuinely seen people saying the manager has to go. That is mind-boggling. I mean, how long do managers get now? You know, when they've got to do a rebuild. I mean, especially in a manager where you've seen so much kind of good stuff happen in the past 8 months as well, and so many players develop and improve. And this was the thing, wasn't it, in previous managers? We were kind of scratching around for which player has improved, which player's done this, which player's done that. How have they kind of improved what, you know, they were when they arrived or whatever. I don't have that issue with the Postecoglou era. There's so many players that I look at and think, wow, what an excellent player they're becoming, kind of thing. And yeah, I do think people kind of forget the whole Spurs did sell their best player at the start of the season. As a player that the entire team was built around. And look, it's all there on social media, those kind of the predictions people were making. What would happen to Spurs without Harry Kane? What would happen with a massive rebuild needing to be done? And I do think, I still maintain it, the start of the season, I think, got people a little bit more excited. Had it been a kind of a bit of an up and down from the start of the season, maybe, I don't know, maybe we would have kind of seen this as the transition rebuild season it is. Whereas because it started so well, I still feel like, I say started so well, like I just said, they won 8 of the last 13 in the Premier League. Look, there are gripes to be had, absolutely. I'm totally not saying people shouldn't be frustrated or annoyed at what happened. And some aspects of playing some games, it's still not the finished article. Spurs are still not putting in consistent performances across 90 minutes. Although, I was about to say Villa. Yeah, there was parts in the first half against Villa that wasn't amazing, but overall I think it was quite a consistent performance in terms of the effort levels and everything else. But again, it's a young team. This is what happens with young teams. Funnily enough, I had some of the reporters at the game yesterday. There was some that normally report on Arsenal, and I was kind of talking to them about the kind of parallels, I guess, between the Arsenal side under Arteta in its first few seasons and where Spurs are at now under Postecoglou. And a lot of them could see the similarities. They could see games when there's terrific football and they're tearing people apart, and then other games where they look a little bit lost and look a little bit static and kind of not entirely sure what to do against teams that kind of set up well against them. And I thought that was quite interesting, just kind of getting a different perspective. I mean, we saw it obviously firsthand with the Pochettino era at Spurs and the way that kind of had its peaks and troughs, and there was progression, but there were also games when we would kind of complain about their inability to break down teams that would sit back and things like that. It's just what happens with young teams being built. It really is. And I do find it incredible that, 8 months in, we've got people just saying, like, chuck this one as well, move on to the next one. I'd be fascinated to know who's the next manager, who's the next person they'd want to kind of bring in. It always seems to be a reaction, but maybe not a solution. And I mean, look, it was annoying, and it was, like I say, the classic Tottenham script. But this is not a Spurs in rebuild that are in the bottom half of the table, as some predicted. I saw some people, predicting relegation without Harry Kane. This is a team that have got the top 4 still in their own hands. Yes, they made a mess of it yesterday. That's the irony. You can't really say, they're always going to go into a situation and bottled it, because they went to Villa Park, played very well in a high pressure game, and came away with it. And this is a team that has not been beaten in the Premier League by City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, some of these big teams. Yet, yes, they've gone and they've lost to the likes of Fulham, Wolves a couple of times, West Ham, Brighton away was, had some really poor moments in it as well. That's the up and down. That's exactly what you're going to get with a young team in a rebuild. Unfortunately, you've got to take the rough with the smooth to begin with, and hopefully it gets to where you want it to be. And again, it's not like Postecoglou didn't warn everyone. He did say in the first season, especially when they're taking on a very different style of football, it takes a while.